Congressman, 7th District Republican Dave Brat. Congressman, great to have you with us.
Hey, John, great to be on. Thank you.
I'm going to get to politics, if I may, and start with this. Donald Trump just outlined a pretty significant immigration reform plan with the help of Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions, who I know you're a big fan of, who will be on our show, by the way, on Wednesday. Have you had a chance to digest any of it, and do you think some of it might make sense or not?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to go through the Trump plan verbatim, but I've been working with Senator Sessions the entire year. And I think you know, and I think you reported on, Mo Brooks and I were put in the Brooks Amendment to take down the Enlist plan.
Right.
Which was a way to give illegal immigrants a pathway to citizenship by joining the military after we fired 30,000 of our own U.S. troops last year. And so the Sessions plan is a model of rationality. He is a very thoughtful person, and so if there's elements of the Sessions plan at work, I ran on principles. For me, it's never about the personality. It's just if the principles align with my principles, I'll be in favor of them, and if they don't, I won't.
All right. Well, it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to definitely change the debate in the United States. Congressman Brad, I want to get to the budget showdown that's coming in September. We have $128 trillion of unfunded liability staring with us. By the way, the guy that taught me that is Dave Brat. We've also got a $4 trillion debt with no end in sight. We've got a budget showdown coming up. What will happen?
Hold on to your seats. I got probably bad news, but I'll just give it to you in the brief Cliff Notes form. Tom Cole, Congressman, is a spokesperson often for Boehner, and they'll float ideas out into the public. And so we got three big issues we got to take care of, and all three of them are tough votes. One is a 6-year comprehensive transportation plan we got to fund somehow, and so far we haven't offered payments, a way to pay for that. And so it's obvious transportation is key, but you got to pay for it. Secondly, this is in a piece in Politico called the trifecta, or the triple threat. So the second threat is busting the budget caps on both the military side and the social discretionary side. And then the third major piece we've got to deal with is raising the debt ceiling again. And so far there's been no moves toward discipline or, putting in counter pieces to that to make sure we get to a balanced budget amendment, et cetera. So what do you do when you got three doozies like that you got to vote on, and the American people are going to be watching? The idea that I've heard floated, and I hope it is not true. I hope our leadership does not take us down this path. But basically they're going to throw it all into one bill, maybe a continuing resolution or an omnibus right before Christmas, just like last year when I came in on the Crownibus, right off. A couple thousand pages to read in 2 days, and that's what we're looking at. And on top of that, the issue of funding Planned Parenthood is also up for grabs in that CR, and that's going to be a huge debate between the House and the Senate and the President, et cetera. And so it's going to be up to the leadership to frame and put in that package what they want, because they control what comes to the floor. But I hope we get our fiscal house in order.
Well, it sounds like the opposite is going to happen. There's going to be another one of these omnibus bills just before Christmas. Anybody that's not in favor of it is going to be called Scrooge or whatever. It's going to be the same old story. Let me just ask you something. Our national debt now, Congressman, is approaching, what, 18, 19 trillion dollars?
18, 19 trillion, right.
When you, and I know I always have to ask you this question, but when you talk to your colleagues on both sides of the aisle, what is the number that gets their attention? Obviously, it's not 18 or 19 trillion. So when you talk to some of your colleagues, even in your own caucus, what's the number that is going to get their attention? 25? 26?
I got a joke I have to crack. The number that gets their attention is 51%. That's the number they need to win the next election. That's That's unfortunately the case with some of them, not all of them, right? My Freedom Caucus guys are fundamentally different. They're very principled, and I'm honored to be a part of that group under Jim Jordan. But, it's not a matter of the number. I mean, it's clear we're already past insolvency, right?
Right.
The newest stat on this is by 2027. That's 11 years from now. All federal revenues will go only to entitlements and interest on the debt. So if the listener knows what that means in terms of mandatory spending, et cetera, that means there will be $0 left in 11 years for the military, education, transportation, all of running government, the Cures Act, any of this, right? So I get smoked out on all these issues. I'm against the Cures Act and all that. That's totally false. I'm for the Cures Act, but you got to pay for it. You don't create another mandatory spending program on top of $127 trillion in mandatory spending, and the kids are obviously the ones we're throwing under the bus. It's always like, can't you learn how to govern, Dave? Don't you guys know how to govern? No, we do know how to govern in the Freedom Caucus. I know how to govern. I follow James Madison. I follow the rule of law and the Constitution. And good governance means you don't let your country go down the drain financially into bankruptcy. So we're trying to govern the right way, and all you can do, it's starting to get there because of folks like you and out on the social media. That $127 trillion number is actually getting out there. I've heard it several times in the last month or so. So we're making a little inroads.
Well, you are, and I say it every day, and Congressman, you're the one that told me that the first week we had you on. You actually told me that during the primary challenge that you had, and it turned out to you were on target. But you look at 2027 coming up. Nobody talks about it. Obviously, you've put that out there. So what happens? I mean, if it's 2027, that's not that. That's it's now 2015. That's a dozen years away. What will happen? What happens?
Yeah, if we do nothing, even current seniors. Right, so the bad news is always, throwing grandma off the cliff or whatever. I'm the one that's putting a plan forward to save seniors and save the system. If we don't do anything, seniors will get a 30% haircut on benefits in that year 2027 immediately, and those programs won't be around for the kids because in 2032 or so, 2033, Social Security and Medicare go insolvent, and Social Security disability goes insolvent this year, 2016. And the solution up in D.C. when a program goes insolvent is just to raid another pot of money to patch over the insolvent program instead of restructuring it so that the program makes sense, right? And I think everybody knows the common sense. All these programs were set up when the average death age was 65. Mm-hmm. Well, they were actuarially sound then. Now the average death age is 83. And so when you fund something based on people working to 65 and you make payments to 83, obviously that system is bankrupt. And shocker, it is. Mm-hmm. It's bankrupt.
So what do we do?
Well, we got to get Democrats and Republicans behind closed doors to start having discussions. Right, Senator Warner out of Virginia was in those discussions, a decade ago. And I've been reaching out to everybody, trying to get, an honest exchange going. I've made contact with several senators' offices, many of my House Democrat members, and, they have reservations about that because some of the Democrats just think there's enough money out there that if you raise taxes on the rich and on businesses, there'll be enough money. And that's false. You can go to the Auditor of Public Accounts for the state or the federal government and ask them that question. And they will say, no, you can't grow your way out of this thing. If we started growing at 4% again, if you raise the ages and you have growth and you means test, you still won't solve the problem. So the bad news, right, I hate to be the guy that rains on the parade and tells the truth, but the bad news is we have to do all of the above in order to sustain these programs for our kids. And everybody in politics always talks about the kids. And so, it's a little ironic that I'm giving the sour news, but the sour news is actually the ethical news that's good for the next generation, and the kids know it. When I talk, they can look you in the eyeball. They know who's telling the truth and who's not.
Well, Congressman, The truth will set you free, and we appreciate you doing that. Congressman, let's get to redistricting. Now it's going to go. It's out of the hands of the state as the state legislature. As you know, it's going to get to a three-judge panel. You guys looked at what the impact could be on the 7th district.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to say because, it goes to the judges. If they follow the law and the intent of the law or whatever, there's a few percentage points that have to be made up out of Bobby Scott's district. And so if they do the right thing, there'll be a percentage point or so from several of us or something along those lines that has to be doled out. Now, that's assuming rationality and assuming ethics, and that the judges will follow the law and the plain language of the law. And so, the irony is that the pass lines were agreed to by the Democrats, by the Democrat governor, by some in the House, and so we're just going to hope that we don't get a reading of the law like Obamacare and all those decisions up at the Supreme Court lately, and that they follow the intent of the law.
Well, look, at the end of the day, whatever your district is, you're going to have to go out and win. So we expect that you'll do that. Now, we have heard, Congressman, very unsettling to us, and I got to just tell you this. I've heard persistent rumors that there's a faction that is looking to field a primary candidate against you in the spring of 2016, funded with $1 million. Your voting record has been solidly Republican on almost every single issue right down the line. What is driving this?
Well, I know. I hope those are overblown, but whatever. I mean, what's driving it has to be if you're 100% on conservative review and you're voting for free markets and you're voting on the Constitution. I was one of the few votes against the Iran deal because I believe in the Senate constitutional duty on treaties. And so you asked the right question. What am I missing? What I must be missing is handing out billions and billions of dollars to people on a free lunch. And so if, the chamber has written that they're going to challenge some of us conservatives, the U.S. chamber, not our state and local friends. The U.S. chamber has written that there's a piece in Politico where they came out and said, we're not happy with some of these conservatives. They're not doing stuff we want, like the Export-Import Bank and just going along with the trade thing with President Obama, et cetera. Well, I'm the most pro-growth guy I know. I got a Ph.D. in economics. And pro-growth to me, when I walk thousands of doors, and the chamber has to walk thousands of doors, the only thing I heard about pro-growth was get rid of Obamacare and get rid of the regulatory environment that's killing business. And I'm 100% on those and on the key issues that are pro-growth to every business I've talked to, right? EPA, Dodd-Frank, executive overreach on everything. I've been voting no. I've got a pro-growth agenda coming up in the fall. I'm going to be laying out and putting forth legislation on all of that. And so, what's missing? The crony capitalism. I guess that's what I'm missing. And so, I'll welcome the challenge. I trust the people in the 7th. They know what's going on, and they'll do the right thing.
Well, I think they will. Look, when you ran in the spring of 2014 against Eric Cantor, everything you said you were going to do, you've done exactly what you've said. You had resounding victory at that time. And I'm just going to predict if there is this challenge, Congressman, I think that you'll end up being a national symbol. And I think that whatever the resources the other people have, I'm sure you'll be able to match it within the United States, because every time you get on our show, you tell the truth. We get a lot of people on that, you really don't understand exactly what's happening, but you've been able to tell our listeners exactly what is happening in there. And look, people understand that there's something wrong, that they don't feel that the United States is going down a path to prosperity. We get that from our listeners day after day. And so, people are looking for something to change it. And I know that some of the feedback that you've gotten from your own constituents is consistent with that, right?
Yeah, no, that's it. That's the unease. You see it on the Republican side. You got 30 to 40% now wrapped up in a few candidates on the conservative side, and 30 to 40% over on the left side with Bernie Sanders and some other candidates, there's huge unease. People know they're getting ripped off, and that the government is not doing its job. And the numbers all reflected. That's what we've been talking about the whole interview here, right? The 18 trillion, the 127 trillion. I mean, it's not like we're suggesting we're off by a little bit. Those are the numbers that show an order of magnitude that put us moving toward Greece. And so everybody is starting to get it. That's the good news, right? Everybody's paying attention to the media and the news and the numbers now, and they want to hear the truth, and it's out there to be had, and people are doing their homework, so that's the good news.
Now, let's get to the Iran deal. I know you've been critical of it. Is there any – well, first of all, it's a treaty as far as I can see, but is there any way to stop it?
It's going to be very hard to stop. Everyone wanted to be a part of it, and so some of the big lobbies up there were pushing for a yes vote from Congress and the Senate on to get the Congress involved. But we did not follow the treaty language. It's to be involved in an executive power grab, and so we went the wrong way. Now we can vote against it, but to overcome a presidential veto, all that the president needs is 1/3 of the House or 1/3 of the Senate. So if he's got 33 plus 1 senators, he wins the day on the Iran deal. And so I put in an amendment right away to stop all of the sanctions money from moving, to keep sanctions in place, subject to the normal constitutional language of having a treaty that requires 2/3 of the Senate to get it right. And I think everybody knows what's at stake. They will, under the president's agreement, Iran will get a legal pathway to a nuclear bomb within 12 to 14 years.
Right.
A legal pathway, plus ICBMs that have one purpose, intercontinental ballistic missiles. You attach a nuclear warhead to the tip of them. They fly over oceans, and they deliver a bomb to people that they call the devil, Israel and the United States of America. And finally, it frees up $150 billion in sanctions relief and $500 billion more dollars over the next decade to Iran, the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world, according to our own State Department. So you put those three things together, and it's not a no, it's a heck no.
Crazy. Congressman, I've got only about a half a minute. Very quickly, are you in favor of lifting the export ban on crude oil?
Yeah, absolutely. We need a global free market in oil to be helping out the Europeans, to take some of the pressure off of their dependency on Russia, and you got to take national security concerns on a country-by-country basis. But, in general, we need to loosen all of that up and get rid of our addiction on oil from the Middle East. And we need to start putting pressure on the rest of the world and writing trade deals where it's not just about narrow trade agreements and tariffs, but if you do the wrong thing with respect to Iran, you won't trade with us, and we'll take it to you. Because our life is at stake and Israel's life is at stake, and it's time to quit goofing around.
All right, that's going to be the final word. We want to thank Congressman Dave Brat for being with us. If you want more info, go to davebrat.com, davebrat.com.